Part 16. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 159. This human head is actually asking for help in Morse code. Even if it is the head of an infected person, how can it still have self-awareness after being separated from the body? Just when Su Tong wanted to continue deciphering to the beat of the head-banging drum, a figure suddenly blocked his sight, picked up the dust cloth on the table, and covered the glass jar. Taking a closer look, it was none other than Song Nuanuan, who made Su Tong a little unsure. At this moment, Song Nuanuan has put on a new makeup. Before, she was still wearing high heels, but now she has put on sports-oriented flat shoes, a black tight-fitting combat uniform, and her long hair is tied into a ponytail. After looking sideways at Wang Yibo, he frowned dissatisfied and said, "What did you bring this person here for?" This. Gao Zhou was speechless for a moment, not knowing how to explain, and he stuttered a little because of his guilty conscience. Seeing this, Song Nuanuan waved her hand impatiently, indicating that Gao Zhou could shut up. She seemed not surprised at all by Gao Zhou's performance. He was just a boring gourd. She had never seen him say a complete sentence in daily life. Song Nuanuan immediately looked at Su Tong again. After looking over Su Tong, her slender eyebrows slightly raised, "You were the one who knocked out Li Zhengqing not long ago and took away 100 potions." She was examining herself, and she was also examining Song Nuanuan. After hearing her words, Su Tong frowned and nodded. "Take it out, Xiaochunzi's source virus. You can take it as you say. What's the benefit of taking it out?" Su Tong broke free from the guard's hand, sat on the chair carelessly, took out the hookah slowly, started to put tobacco on it and started smoking. "In 40 minutes, we will start activating the hydrogen bomb and carry out a major cleaning plan. You can stay here safely." Gao Zhou stood behind and was very tempted when he heard this proposal. "Then wait 40 minutes, when you activate the hydrogen bomb, and then I will give you the source virus. It's not too late anyway," Su Tong said calmly. "Besides, without the source virus, what if those evolvers come in? This is the last asset I need to survive." Hearing this, Song Nuanuan sighed helplessly, walked to the oil painting aside, pushed the painting away, and a safe appeared in front of her. "What you said is correct, but I need the source virus very much now. Let's do this. These 2 special potions are given to you as chips, and they are regarded as rewards for the source virus." As she spoke, she skillfully twisted the combination lock of the safe a few times. The safe was slowly opened. Song Nuanuan took out 2 blue potions from it and placed them on the table. Gao Zhou's eyes turned green when he saw these 2 light blue potions. Even his breathing became rapid. You must know that he was with Su Tong along the way. Every time he mentioned the effect of the gene-enhancing potion prepared by Li Zhengqing, he almost couldn't help but take out the potion and give it to himself. But he can't, because from the name of this potion, it is not difficult to see how precious this potion is. Kia's father had been bedridden for many years. No matter whether he was in a real hospital or he secretly tried to drink the recovery potion, it was of no avail. According to his grandfather's words, those who work in their profession are doomed to have 5 disadvantages and 3 shortcomings. Even if you are born healthy, you will still have a disability. But Gao Zhou still wanted to give it a try. At least the gene-enhancing potion in his hand might be the hope for his father to stand up. Therefore, even though Su Tong advised him, Gao Zhou still refused to inject gene-enhancing drugs as early as possible. "But if there is one extra at the moment, then I don't have so many worries." Thinking of this, Gao Zhou's heart became eager. He looked at Su Tong out of the corner of his eye, looking forward to his choice. I saw him casually picking up one and putting it in his hand. The blue potion shone with a bit of metallic color, just like the gene-enhancing potion Li Zhengqing gave them, but if you look closely, you will find that there are some differences in it. After playing with the potion in his hand for a few times, it disappeared like magic and was thrown into the prop book by him. Advanced Muscle, Strengthening, Potion. After injection, the medicine prepared by Lee Jenkins' magical techniques can greatly increase muscle strength, even to an inhuman level. After the injection, the physical strength will be greatly improved. The specific amount of improvement is currently lacking clinical trial data. Note, 148. Judging from the entry in the prop book, this potion is definitely priceless. But there is a countdown timer underneath the item. Obviously, this item is not without time limit. It will lose its efficacy in more than an hour at most. This can't help but make people very regretful, otherwise if this thing is brought to the exhibition, I believe it will be enough to make many experts who specialize in close combat go crazy for it. It is even foreseeable that the price can get at least thousands of script points. After all, the muscles of most melee warriors have been tempered for a long time. Even with the assistance of various prop cards, their muscles have reached the limit that humans can achieve. If you want to go one step further, it may be as difficult as reaching the sky. At this time, such a special item appears, which greatly improves muscle strength, does not occupy the grid of the item book, and does not even have any side effects. If it were you, can you not be moved? After seeing all the entries for this prop, Su Tong stretched out his palm and saw the potion in his hand again and placed it gently on the table. He took a sip of hookah, tilted his head and looked at Song Nuanuan with a lazy look on his face and said, "Not enough. Isn't this enough? Don't be too greedy." Song Nuanuan pressed her hands on the table, and her sinister eyes became more and more gloomy. In fact, let alone her, even Gao Zhou who was standing behind felt that Su Tong was too greedy. This is a special prop worth thousands of script points. Even this cannot satisfy his appetite, and it is too greedy. But Su Tong said firmly, "In addition to these 2 bottles of potion, I also want one more thing." "What?" Song Nuanuan asked with a dark face. Su Tong pointed at the head stored in the glass cover in front of him and said loudly, "Simple, that head." Song Nuanuan's expression changed at first when she heard this, but she soon calmed down and looked directly into Su Tong's eyes. After the two looked at each other for a while, she suddenly grinned, "What a big tone, how can you what? Why?" Su Tong grinned and sneered, "Just because you can't get the second source virus now, if you don't give it to me, I will destroy this thing." Su Tong's expression made Song Nuanuan's teeth itch with hatred. After a moment, he reluctantly agreed with a dark face. After Song Nuanuan said a few words to the scientific researchers on the side, the glass jar containing the head was placed in front of him. After Su Tong opened the dust-proof cloth on it, he saw that his head was groggy, as if he was about to fall asleep, and he was not as excited as before. This head needs to be revived and awakened by continuous electric shocks. This is not an easy task. The power reserve in the safe area is very scarce now, and even the lights cannot be turned on, so you can only find a way on your own. Song Nuanuan opened her mouth to explain. Su Tong checked carefully and made sure that there was nothing wrong, then he threw the source virus that he had casually taken away to Song Nuanuan, and asked at the same time, "By the way, where is Wang Suzi? My dad is resting in the conference room. You will naturally see him later." Song Nuanuan nodded to the guard behind her as she spoke, then quickly left with the source virus. When these guards saw this, they immediately retreated, leaving only Su Tong and Gao Zhou in the huge room. As soon as he saw everyone leaving, Gao Zhou couldn't wait to reach out and pick up one of the potions, put it in the prop book and took a look, his face suddenly lit up with joy. You've made money, this wave of blood is worth it." Just as he was saying this, Gao Zhou was about to inject this medicine into himself. After all, this medicine had time, so naturally the earlier the injection, the better. He lifted his arm and saw that Su Tong was still holding the glass jar containing the human head at this moment. He couldn't help but remind him, "Don't be stunned, hurry up." As he spoke, he was about to put the bottle of medicine into the syringe. When he was about to inject himself, Su Tong's hand suddenly pressed his wrist, and he stared at the glass jar in his hand gloomily. I saw electric light flashing from time to time under the glass jar. If I listened carefully, there was actually a rhythmic tapping sound coming from the glass jar. Su Tong listened carefully to the banging sounds, with the cold light flashing in his eyelids, and in his heart it was like a scattered puzzle piece was finally put together. Suddenly he grinned and said to Gaozhou, "I have a bold idea, do you want to join in?" Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 160. About half an hour later, Song Nuanuan walked in again with someone. Su Tong and Gaozhou were seen lying on the ground unconscious. Seeing this, Song Nuanuan was not surprised at all. She picked up the injection gun on the ground and took a look, only to see that all the medicine inside had been injected. He kicked Gaozhou off the ground. After seeing his face clearly, he couldn't help but sneered, "I'm just telling you, why did Wang Yabo come back so quickly? It turns out he is a fake." After speaking, he looked at Su Tong again. Sure enough, people die for wealth and birds die for food. This sentence has never been missed. As he spoke, he opened the glass jar with his fingers, and saw that the head in the glass jar had completely fallen into deathly silence after no longer being stimulated by the current. The smile on Song Nuanuan's face became more and more weird, and she whispered, "Hey, do you think so, my good girl?" As the words fell, Song Nuanuan suddenly raised the gun in her hand, pointed it at the glass jar and pulled the trigger. Boom! The ear-piercing gunfire sounded loudly, and a hole as big as a thumb was made in the head in the jar. After confirming that the head in the jar was completely dead and would never have a chance to be reborn, Song Nuanuan could not help but let out a long sigh of relief on her thin face. Immediately he looked at Su Tong and Gaozhou who were lying on the ground, and silently raised the muzzle of the gun and pointed it at them. But after thinking about it, he put the gun back, and reached out his hand to pat Su Tong's face contemptuously. "Forget it, just save 2 bullets. Don't you want to stay here? Just follow this bunker. Let's finish it together." Speaking of this, Song Nuanuan suddenly remembered something and looked up at the time. Oh, the effect of the medicine should be almost gone. When the general wakes up later, he will definitely be very hungry. I hope he eats quickly enough. Let you suffer less. After saying that, Song Nuanuan led the people out with a smile. It wasn't until Song Nuanuan walked further and further away that Gaozhou, who fell to the ground, slowly opened his eyelids and glanced left and right to make sure that the person was gone, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Huh. It's so dangerous. This bitch, no, it should be this old Yinbai. I thought she was going to be a gangster. Su Tong was still lying on the table, but he didn't know when he had opened his eyelids and said with a smile, "No, those who have the chance to win are probably not so eager to kill their opponents. Such people like to kill everyone with just a few clicks. Plan your personal ending and enjoy the feeling of playing with everyone's destiny." Gao Zhou shook his head and got up. After hearing this, he couldn't help but asked, "Why are you so sure?" Su Tong raised his eyebrows, looked at the glass mirror on the side, stretched out his hand and touched his cheek gently a few times, then smiled and said, "Because that's the kind of person I am." When he finished speaking, he slowly opened his palm, and a small paper figure in his palm raised its head, dancing and gesticulating towards Su Tong. Gao Zhou stepped forward and looked at the paper man, and couldn't help but smile. "Don't say it, everything is fate. If it weren't for you, we would have injected that bottle of fake medicine in a daze, and now we might end up worse than you." After Gao Zhou finished speaking, he raised his head, only to find that Su Tong was looking at him with contempt. His disdainful eyes seemed to say, "Obviously you were almost fooled, so don't hold me back." In fact, After I saw the entry in the prop book, I felt a little weird, especially the word strong in brackets. I always felt that something was not quite right. Moreover, there was only a countdown in the annotation without any explanation, which made him even more suspicious. In addition, there was Song Nuanuan's appearance and demeanor. From the first moment he came in and saw this girl, he felt that the Song Nuanuan in front of him was similar to the Song Nuanuan he saw outside the scientific research building last time. Difference. Even though I only glanced at her briefly at that time, I still remember Song Nuanuan's special girlish charm. In addition, the human head in the glass jar is actually typing Morse code for himself. With all the doubts added up, how could he dare to use such a drug of unknown origin rashly? Therefore, even without her warning, he would never be fooled easily. The most likely possibility is that he watched Gao Zhou lie straight on the ground after injecting this fake medicine. And then through the Morse code that sounded in the jar, he became even more convinced that his judgment was correct, because the head in the jar turned out to be Song Nuanuan himself. It turned out that the potion given to them by Song Nuanuan, who had been taken away from her, seemed to be fine, and even the prop booklet gave a positive explanation. However, once injected, you will find that the powerful drug effect is exactly as stated in the prop manual, adding huge hardness to the muscles, but this hardness will make the body unable to move at all. It can even cause a lack of oxygen to the brain, leading to coma. The so-called countdown refers to the duration of the drug's effect, but because there is no annotation, it is misleading and makes people impatient to inject themselves. Song Nuanuan was like this at the time, and she was horrified to discover that Wang Suzi took out the head not simply to find the password, but to use his superpower to seize the body. What surprised her even more was that Wang Suzi discovered early on that she was not his daughter, but he just kept silent and continued to use her, just to wait until now. She went so smoothly in the early stage that she lost her vigilance towards Wang Suzi and was suddenly tricked by Wang Suzi. If she hadn't met Su Tong, she would have died here. But having said that, Song Nuanuan is really lucky. Because Su Tong can not only understand Morse code, but also happens to have lightning powers, which continuously recharges her big head. What's even better is that he also has the ability to capture souls, and can extract her soul trapped in this head. All kinds of coincidences are indispensable, so she is said to be lucky. Of course, under these coincidences, Su Tong still adhered to the principle of equal exchange and offered Song Nuanuan a 500 script split agreement. The agreement is provided by Gao Zhou. This kind of agreement can be exchanged for script points at the Script Experience Center. It is very cheap at 10 points for 12 scripts. According to the agreement, to help Song Nuanuan get out of trouble, she is willing to pay 500 script points to Su Tong and Gao Zhou. If she does not have 500 script points, her prop card will be randomly drawn as compensation. This price is not cheap, but for Song Nuanuan, it is not only fair, but also a great deal. Let alone 500 script points, she is willing to give it even if it is 1000. After all, the dog's life is at stake. While he was talking, he heard a bang upstairs. I saw that the door of the office upstairs had been knocked open by a huge strange force. A thick tongue, like a flexible python, emerged from the crack and began to twist the handle outside the door. The door lock was soon opened by twisting, and a face covered with sarcoma could still be vaguely identified as Wang Suzi's. At this moment, this guy's eyes were glowing with a grayish-white light like an infected person, and his body had swelled. In his belly, a weird big face twisted and made a low growling sound. Wang Suzi seized Song Nuanuan's body and transferred her soul to the general's big head, while the general's own soul was transferred to Wang Suzi's shabby body. His plan is not just to carry out a large-scale cleansing of the outside world. The bunker itself is also a decoy. Once the hydrogen bomb is launched, the neutron bomb in the bunker will be detonated. After raising the entire bunker to the ground, Kaitoki had safely moved into another safe zone and watched the world being completely cleansed. After a few years, he could lead humanity out again, and everything would be clean by then. Humans began to restart the world. And he himself can rely on his own abilities to become immortal and become a mythical figure. To be honest, since he learned the truth, he could just kill Wang Suzi on the spot. After all, in terms of strength, Song Nuanuan, the only one who was still a bit of a threat to him, was in trouble. Who else could be his opponent? But how could he miss such a wonderful plan? After he and Gao Zhou exchanged glances, he jumped up and rushed towards the general who had just woken up. The general, who had just woken up, obviously hadn't realized what was happening. He just saw Su Tong rushing towards him and subconsciously waved his thick arms to grab him. As a result, Su Tong's figure turned slightly to the side, followed by a punch on the side of his face. At the same time, an electric arc burst out from his palm, causing the general's whole body to twitch and dance. Gao Zhou took the opportunity to shoot out several silver needles and pierce his head. His fingers shook a few times, and the general was immediately frozen in place, unable to move. After controlling the general, Su Tong turned around and looked at the paper man on the table. Song Nuanuan seemed to realize something, her hands kept dancing, and she even turned around to run away, but Su Tong didn't care. He grabbed the paper man with one hand, took out the magic bell with the other and walked quickly to Wang Suzi's body in front of him. He flicked the bell with his finger, and as the bell flew out with a faint sound, Su Tong opened the corners of his mouth and his eyes flashed with a faint light. Guard the soul. It's a little late. I will finish this script tomorrow. After finishing it, I will make up for all the shortfalls in the past. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 161. Hoo. The tunnel was filled with a strong smell of blood, and countless corpses fell to the ground. After breaking the neck of the soldier in front of him with his fingers, Liang Hong finally collapsed on the ground from exhaustion. Even the powerful physical strength of the source virus was a little too much at this moment. After all, let alone a living person in front of him, even if it was a carrot, it was not easy for him to pull it out one by one. What's more, these guys were all injected with the second dose of Super Potion Warriors. A dozen of them rushed up at a time. Although he could kill them, he would not feel comfortable. The place was so big that he didn't even have to hide. He would have to take a few punches. Once the number of punches increased, he would gradually become unbearable. He waved his hands repeatedly. Don't, I'm slowing down. I'm a little distracted. Let's challenge each other if we can. You can't be so disrespectful of martial arts. Wang Yibo didn't care about this. When he heard this, he couldn't help but sneered. Haha, a duel. Do you think I will challenge you in a duel? If you want to blame, you can only blame yourself for bringing too few people. As he said this, he waved his hand to indicate that the next wave of soldiers would rush forward and beat the master to death with random punches. Wang Yibo was not going to give Liang Hong a chance to breathe. However, just as a dozen soldiers were about to charge forward, suddenly Wang Suzi's voice came from the tunnel. I am Wang Suzi, give up the cleaning plan immediately, give up the cleaning plan immediately, give up the cleaning plan immediately, everyone returns to work. We will fight these monsters to the end. In addition, all personnel in the bunker are requested to make every effort to arrest Wang Qian and Wang Yibo. They are traitors to our humanity. No one is allowed to provide funding or shelter. Once discovered, they will be killed on the spot. Wang Suzi's voice came through the broadcast in the bunker, and everyone was stunned for a moment. The soldiers who had just fought with Liang Hong looked at Wang Yibo beside him with strange eyes. The plot suddenly reversed, and the smile on Wang Yibo's face suddenly froze. He was stunned for a moment, and Liang Hong couldn't stop laughing. He pointed at Wang Yibo and said, "I heard it all, I heard it all. Your boss has already spoken, but you haven't taken him down yet, so why are you standing there in a daze?" The plan couldn't keep up with the change, and Wang Yibo really didn't expect such a sudden encounter. His face changed, and he kicked away the warriors who had not yet recovered in front of him, and rushed out of the crowd like lightning. "Hurry up and chase, don't let this thief get away. Hurry up, I want to see him fight a group of you alone." Seeing that Wang Yibo was about to run away, Liang Hong immediately became unhappy. He couldn't bear the beating in vain. Today, the situation was changing and he couldn't let this kid run away. As a result, Liang Hong didn't even care about his mission. He took a step ahead of everyone and chased Wang Yibo closely. While chasing, he cursed, "Son thief, don't run away." It's a pity that Wang Yibo not only wanted to run, but even transformed into the shape of a beast while running wildly, and his speed suddenly accelerated. In the command room on the other side, Song Nuanuan, who had regained her living body, was tossing the sticky clothes on her body with a look of disgust on her face. The smell on them almost made her vomit. "Shouldn't we only want Wang Qian? Why bring Wang Yibo with you? Isn't he your loyal henchman?" Gao Zhou stood aside and asked with a puzzled face. Judging from his tone, it is obvious that he has no good impression of Wang Yibo, but simply does not understand why Song Nuanuan betrayed his teammates like this. "It's all a show. It's because everyone knows that Wang Yibo is my henchman, so we should all be wanted together. But are you sure that Wang Suzi will really come back? He knows that I don't have the code to deactivate the hydrogen bomb." Song Nuanuan glanced sideways at Su Tong, and then glanced at the time on the clock. There was less than 5 minutes left. If Wang Suzi hasn't rushed over in 5 minutes and entered the correct unbinding password, they will be wiped out in the neutron bomb explosion along with the bunker. Even if he ran out now, he wouldn't have enough time to get to the nearest safe point, and he would still die from the impact of the hydrogen bomb explosion outside. After learning this result, the first person who couldn't bear it was Gao Zhou. He didn't expect such a result, so he regretted why he didn't arrest Wang Suzi, who had become Song Nuanuan when they met before. But Su Tong shook his head and directly rejected his proposal. He smoked the hookah in his hand unhurriedly. "If we had used force at that time, he would never have told us the password. Don't forget, his dream is to create an absolutely clean new world, and whether or not he is in his dream is not the most important thing." "I agree." Song Nuanuan nodded, agreeing with Su Tong's view. Having been with Wang Suzi for so long, Song Nuanuan can still understand Wang Suzi's character to some extent, and knows that Su Tong is right, using force will only push them to a dead end. "Then I don't understand. In that case, why do you conclude that he will turn back and turn off the hydrogen bomb and neutron bomb?" Gao Zhou's mind didn't turn around for a moment, feeling that Su Tong was completely dragging them into a pit of fire. If he had known this result earlier, he should have thought of ways to find those safe spots and hide in them. "No. Don't you understand yet? Only magic can defeat magic. What Wang Suzi wants is a dream, but if there are no other living people except himself in the world of his dreams, do you think it will be him? A dream." After Su Tong finished speaking, he heard the hurried footsteps of a group of people. When Wang Suzi, who was wearing Song Nuanuan's skin, appeared, he just gave Su Tong and his group a cold look, then quickly walked to the console, took out a key, inserted it in it, twisted it, and input a series of passwords at the same time. It wasn't until he saw the prompt that all hydrogen bombs were turned off again that Wang Suzi finally breathed a sigh of relief. Others were about to leave the bunker when they heard their own voices coming from the loudspeaker. As a result, the children who had just entered the safe area actually walked out again. When he wanted to stop these children, he soon became a traitor. Wang Suzi was dumbfounded and could only rush back. Fortunately, he rushed into the conference room just a minute before the bomb was about to explode. There are not many twists and turns in the whole process, but every minute and every second is a great torment for everyone. Although Su Tong didn't speak, the smoke pot on the chimney was already filled with tobacco, and large mouthfuls of green smoke poured out from his mouth and nose. And Song Nuanuan, who had finally survived the desperate situation, was so frightened that her face turned pale. She stared at the countdown of the last 10 seconds. The huge panic actually made her wet her pants without realizing it. Not to mention Gaozhou, if Su Tong's hand hadn't been pressing his shoulder tightly, I don't know what stupid things this guy would have done. So when they saw Wang Suzi quickly entering the password to defuse the neutron bomb that was about to explode under the bunker, everyone subconsciously glanced at the time on the clock and found that there was less than 10 seconds left before the explosion, and they suddenly felt scared. Even if you think about it carefully, you can't help but feel as if you have just come back from a ghost gate call. Naturally, this included Wang Suzi himself, who was sitting in the corner with a dejected face, glaring at Su Tong and Gao Zhou with unkind eyes. You didn't inject any medicine. Nonsense, if we were injected with the medicine, we would all be doomed. Old thief, your plan was so obvious that we almost capsized, Gao Zhou shouted reluctantly. Capsized in the sewer. Wang Suzi raised his eyebrows slightly, looked sideways at Gao Zhuopi and said with a smile, when it comes to capsizing the boat in the sewer, it was only me who capsized the boat. If I had known better, I should have shot both of you in the head. Yes. I was too careless. He really didn't expect that Su Tong and the others would not fall into the trap he carefully designed. Not only did they not fall into the trap, they even extracted Song Nuanuan's soul from such a big head and let it occupy his body. This is a result that Wang Suzi never expected. He actually lost by just this one step. To say that the boat was capsized in the gutter, he was the one who capsized in the gutter. Humph, the winner is the king and the loser is the loser. I didn't expect this defeat to be such a child's play. If you want to kill or behead me, it's up to you. But if you want the code to detonate the hydrogen bomb, that's absolutely impossible. Wang Suzi said and sat down on the ground. As soon as he sat down, Song Nuanuan kicked him over. Don't use my skirt to sit up. As he said this, he even didn't forget to take out a roll of tissue paper and put 2 sheets under his buttocks before letting Wang Suzi sit down again. Just as Wang Suzi sat down, he saw a dark shadow rushing in from outside and blocking Wang Suzi's face. It was none other than Song Nuanuan's loyal dog licker Wang Yabo. Following this guy all the way, there will naturally be another person missing. It was Liang Hong who was beaten all over. Liang Hong caught up with him angrily and saw Su Tong and everyone behind him. He couldn't help being shocked, but he sat next to Su Tong with a calm expression on his face. Oh, it's all ready. He raised his cloak with his lips, and a thick pool of blood splashed out from the cloak, leaving a trail of blood on the ground. Although he was beaten, at least in terms of momentum, he could not lose. Saying this, he put one hand on his waist and took out a cigar with the other hand. Following Su Tong's previous example, he slowly cut off the butt of the cigar, took out a lighter and slowly burned the inside of tobacco. As a result, before the cigar was in his mouth, he turned his head and saw Su Tong holding a huge hookah and taking a long puff, then spit out a huge cloud of smoke towards him. Liang Hong only felt that his eyes were white for a while, and he almost fainted from the second-hand smoke. After finally waving his hand to disperse the smoke, he saw that Gao Zhou actually snatched Su Tong's hookah and took 2 puffs of it happily before returning it. Looking at the hookah pipe in Su Tong's hand, and then at the cigar in his own hand, Liang Hong's mouth twitched a few times, and he lost interest in continuing to smoke. He simply threw away the cigar and glanced sideways at Song Nuanuan. On the body. Seeing Song Nuanuan at this moment, Liang Hong remembered the Queen Mother's mission, his eyes turned cold, and he was about to kill the old guy first, and then settle the score with Su Tong and the others. But he saw Su Tong suddenly reached out and grabbed his arm, looking directly at him with cold eyes, which made Liang Hong's eyelids jump. Just when he was about to speak, he heard him say, "Teach your men to retreat, and take Yang by the way sanity restored." "You are threatening me." Liang Hong was immediately a little annoyed when he heard this. He was now the source of the virus, and with the special blessing from the Queen Mother, his strength was not much weaker than that of Su Tong. Faced with such a threat, he couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. But Su Tong didn't respond to his words at all. He just stared at him and said, "Everyone is in my hands now. If you don't retreat, everyone will die. Of course you won't survive, but you can't survive either." "What are you saying?" Liang Hong vaguely felt that Su Tong's words did not seem to be addressed to him. When he was about to pull his hand away from Su Tong's hand in confusion, the world in front of him suddenly turned white, and then his pupils gradually turned dark. "Green. You can retreat, but I must take the child back. It is too dangerous for that child to stay here. She does not belong to humans and should not be controlled by humans." When Liang Hong opened his mouth again, his voice became extremely soft. It was a voice that Su Tong had not heard for a long time. It was Yan Niang's voice. No, to be precise, it should be the voice of the Queen Mother. "Want to take the child away? You have a beautiful idea, but since you said so, I will not refuse you, but the child must live in the human camp until he is 12 years old before he can leave the camp. You can kill him by then. Or bring it to the lair, in short we will no longer care about it then." Naturally, Yan Niang would not be very satisfied with this answer, but he knew the man in front of him very well. It was impossible to get the slightest advantage when he knew that the other party had already made conditions. Just as Yan Niang nodded in agreement, the evolvers looking outside immediately receded like the tide. "And his mission, Wang Suzi, is already in my hands. I can guarantee that he will not pose a threat to you again. Then his mission is considered completed. Tell him to get out as soon as possible." Su Tong continued to make requests. Yan Niang hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded. After Yan Niang nodded and agreed, Su Tong and the others immediately received a prompt from the script space. "The main mission, survival and destruction, completed. You have completed the main mission and can return to reality at any time. If you do not return, you can stay in this world for 24 hours. Hearing the prompt that the main plot was completed, Gao Zhou and the others' expressions on their faces undoubtedly relaxed. Song Nuanuan and Wang Yabo even decided to return immediately and did not want to stay in this world for a moment. But they seemed to have thought of something, so they did not choose to leave immediately, but turned their attention to Wang Suzi himself. "Where is he?" Gao Zhou looked at Wang Suzi with an unkind expression. This guy almost let everyone be buried with him, so he felt extremely unhappy. "He." Su Tong looked at Wang Suzi himself and raised his eyebrows slightly. "Hey, that's none of your business. I still have a big gift to give him." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 162. In the end, when everyone looked at each other, no one left the script world, which was a bit embarrassing now. Obviously everyone has unfinished business here. No one wants to leave before maximizing benefits. At this time, Gao Zhou took Su Tong aside and whispered a few words before returning to reality. In fact, there are no follow-up tasks for him to stay here, and there are no unharvested results. He just wants to tell Su Tong that if he has free time, he must come to Xiangzi. Su Tong asked him what was going on, but he didn't say anything. He said mysteriously, "You'll know when you get here. Don't worry, I will never harm you." It's not that he deliberately wants to show off, but there are many people here, and it's not convenient for him to say anything. After leaving a phone number for him, Gao Zhou took the lead in leaving the script. After Gao Zhou's figure gradually disappeared in front of Su Tong and others, the other people looked at each other. Liang Hong had regained consciousness at this moment. He looked around blankly. When he learned that his mission had been recognized by the Queen Mother, he was considered complete. After that, he did not return, but chose to leave. If he is fast enough, he can rush back to the lair in 24 hours and ask for a generous reward from the Queen Mother. Song Nuanuan handed Su Tong a business card with only a string of phone numbers on it. I owe you a favor this time. When you attend the exhibition next week, if it's convenient, you might as well give me a call and let me treat you to a meal and let's have a good chat. With that said, Song Nuanuan got up and left with Wang Yabo. If Su Tong had predicted correctly, the reason Song Nuanuan left in such a hurry was probably because she wanted to go to Li Zhengqing to ask for the third super potion. With her current identity and appearance, Su Tong indirectly helped her control the entire camp. She had to make a fortune in resources before leaving. Don't forget, she still owes Su Tong and Gao Zhou 500 script points that have not been paid. When she leaves the script world, these script points will be automatically deducted. After everyone left, only Su Tong and Wang Suzi, who had transformed into Song Nuanuan, were left in the control room. He took out a cigar from the prop book and handed it to him. Wang Suzi shook his head and rejected Su Tong, but took out a box of Hung Tashan from his pocket. It seems that he still prefers the excitement of cigarettes to the taste of cigars. What are you going to do with me? Wang Suzi sat in the corner with an expression of unspeakable depression. His plan has obviously been successful. He only needs to wait for an earth-shattering explosion to give those children a clean world. As a result, he lost in a mess. When he saw the children walking out of the safe spot, he was anxious but helpless. We can only come back obediently and deactivate the hydrogen bomb. Su Tong didn't respond to him. He just waited quietly for him to finish smoking his cigarette before calling out the big fat man, "Take you somewhere." The big fat man couldn't help but put out his dense tentacles, picked up Wang Suzi and walked out. Liang Hong had already retreated with the evolvers, and the camp was filled with shouts and screams. When Wang Suzi was carried out of the bunker by the big fat man, a pair of complicated eyes focused on Wang Suzi's face. She seemed confused as to why the leader's daughter would betray humanity. Suddenly, no one knew who threw a stone and hit Wang Suzi, followed by the second and third stone. Some people even wanted to rush forward, but they were swept aside by the big fat man. Wang Suzi lowered his head silently, neither defending himself nor begging everyone to stop. In fact, he knew in his heart that no one really cared about whether he had betrayed the camp at this time. Even these people didn't care about the truth at all. They just wanted to take the opportunity to legitimately vent their inner depression. For these people, Wang Suzi was disdainful in his heart. In his eyes, there were not many good people among these survivors. Why could some of them survive? Are they really lucky? Thinking of this, Wang Suzi despised these people even more. It wasn't until the guards arrived that they stopped everyone from continuing to cause chaos. The higher UPS had already issued a message to hand over the traitor to Su Tong, so they couldn't interfere too much. Su Tong led Wang Suzi all the way to the foot of a fruit tree. This was exactly where Zhang Qiang had brought him after he arrived at the camp. The location happened to be on a small hillside, and he could see half of the camp below. I saw that there was smoke everywhere in the huge camp. In the distance, Yangkang almost wiped out the entire factory area behind, leaving a huge hole in the southwest. Looking from the direction, Yangkang did not leave with the large army like Liang Hong, but chose a completely different direction. Su Tong signaled the fat man to put Wang Suzi down and threw him a pack of wet wipes to wipe the blood off his face. If you just wanted to insult me like this, you achieved your goal, but if you think it will cause me pain, then you are probably miscalculating. Wang Suzi responded to Su Tong in a strong voice. Unexpectedly, Su Tong still didn't talk to him, just sat beside him, took out the hookah pipe, filled it with shredded tobacco, took a few puffs, and looked into the distance with deep eyes. Finally, after taking a few puffs of smoke, he said in a hoarse voice, "There is such a story. There is a child in it who has to start cooking for his parents every day before dawn. His father is mute and his mother is a mute. Blind man, a blind man and a mute are a perfect match, but it only hurts the child. A blind man matches a mute." Wang Suzi was startled, as if he was thinking about something, but he didn't fully understand it. "What do you mean?" He thought about it in his mind, and his expression became more and more suspicious. Su Tong narrowed his eyes and whispered, "Everyone was praising this child, until one night, he picked up a knife from the kitchen and killed his parents with his own hands." After hearing this, Wang Suzi thought thoughtfully for a moment and then sneered, "Well done, why do such burdensome parents still have children?" After saying this, he suddenly looked at Su Tong. He asked with a half smile, "The child in this story can't be you, right?" "No, I made this up." Su Tong took a puff of hookah and looked back at Wang Suzi. "Now you are the irresponsible parent. This camp is your child. This is why you lost. You." Wang Suzi was stunned when he heard this, and looked at Su Tong suddenly, and was speechless for a moment. "Look! They're coming." Su Tong waved to the distance, and saw Zhang Qiang running over with a group of children. After they came out of the safe point, they heard that Su Tong had brought Wang Qian, Wang Suzi, all the way to this hill. Zhang Qiang's smart little mind immediately understood that this was a signal from Uncle Yu to him, so he immediately rushed over with his friends. In this regard, Zhang Qiang did not disappoint him. "Uncle Yu." Zhang Qiang hurried over and threw himself into Su Tong's arms. Although he didn't know what happened, his intuition told him that they were still alive. The planned hydrogen bomb did not explode. Everything belonged to Uncle Yu in front of him. Credit. Su Tong patted Zhang Qiang's head, pointed at Wang Qian and said, "This man betrayed the camp and almost killed everyone. Now I hand him over to you. How do you think you should deal with him?" Zhang Qiang didn't expect that Su Tong would push such a problem in front of him, and scratched his head in confusion for a while. But some older children behind him started talking after hearing this. "Kill her," an older child suddenly shouted. "Yes. Kill her." Other children also joined in. For children like them, killing is not far away and out of reach. The only way they could think of to deal with a betrayer, or even a murderer who almost destroyed the camp, was so simple and crude. Hearing the voices of these children, Wang Suzi frowned, but did not defend himself. He just looked at Zhang Qiang standing in front of him curiously. From the face of this young child, Wang Suzi seemed to see a depth that should not belong to this child's age. In those black and white eyes, it seemed that he was thinking deeply about something. Finally, Zhang Qiang raised his head, looked at Su Tong and said, "Let her go and throw her out of the camp." Su Tong asked with a sullen face, "Why?" Zhang Qiang raised his head, "Because we are not beasts, we are human beings. I am willing to give her a more decent trial for the same kind of people." The excellent answer made Su Tong and Wang Suzi look at each other. Su Tong covered his mouth and said with a smile, "Look, this gift is not bad." Wang Suzi actually nodded with satisfaction. Obviously this gift really surprised him. Even though both of them could tell, Zhang Qiang was deliberately trying to figure out Su Tong's thoughts to give the answer. If he really wanted to kill him, would it be his turn to have sex with a brat like him, Luoliba? It was clearly to give him a chance to see if he could tell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Although this is far-fetched, it is not easy to think of this step at such a young age. Thinking of this, Wang Suzi stood up, reached out and took Zhang Qiang's hand and walked aside. Zhang Qiang was reluctant at first, but after Su Tong nodded towards him, he carefully followed Wang Suzi to the fruit tree not far away. As for the other children, they wanted to follow, but they were all stopped by Big Fatty. I saw Wang Suzi explaining something to Zhang Qiang under the fruit tree, and after handing a shining silver key to Zhang Qiang, he took out a dagger and pierced his heart unceremoniously. Looking at the key in his hand and the piece of paper with the password written on it, Zhang Qiang stood there blankly for more than 10 seconds before finally coming back to his senses, remembering the password firmly in his heart, and then stuffed the note into his mouth, ensuring that no one else in the world will know the existence of the password. After he swallowed the note, he finally remembered something. He hurriedly raised his head and looked in the direction of Su Tong, only to find that Su Tong and the fat figure were standing not far away, waving towards him. Waving his hands, the figure gradually blurred until it disappeared. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 163. With the darkness coming in front of me. The story of the entire script began to emerge in front of me like a horse and a lantern. Su Tong sat down with a bag of snacks in his hand, as if he was sitting in a cinema watching a movie, watching the pictures flashing before his eyes. In the picture, number 8 is arrogant and domineering, killing everyone, and is finally beheaded at the foot of Mei Cheng in defeat. Yan Niang finally got her wish and became the new Queen Mother. I still saw Yan Niang becoming the Queen Mother from the picture in front of me, it was so ugly. The huge body is like a giant worm, with slender nerve networks spread throughout every corner of the nest. Able to bring her will to every infected person. But from now on, she could never leave that huge nest. At this time, the scene changed, and it was Yang Kong who appeared. This guy walked all the way to the west with his huge body until the figure disappeared into the sea. The picture kept flickering, with black and white eyes on Zhang Qiang's childish face staring at the distant sky, until the little face gradually developed edges and corners, turning from a child into a young man. The bunch of silver keys was finally inserted into the keyhole. After a bunch of numbers were entered, the scene in front of him finally turned into darkness. The world of this scenario has ended, and the mission rewards are being settled, a cold prompt came. The main storyline of the script is one survivor. The mission is completed and 60 script points are obtained. Script branch task 1, close the door, the task is completed, and 70 script points are obtained. Script side mission 2, rescue, completed, 70 script points obtained. Scenario side mission 3, hunting mutants. The mission is completed and 70 script points are obtained. Special identity mission 1, find partners, mission completed, 80 script points obtained. A large number of task calculations appeared in front of him. Because there were too many, Su Tong chose to skip them and go directly to see his total gains. 3 main missions, 5 side missions, and 2 special identity missions add up to a total of 690 script points. Seeing this number, he raised his brows slightly and curled his lips, stingy. Nearly 700 script points are considered high based on the accounting of other script worlds. But for a 9-player difficulty book, it is a very low number. This number is not even as good as their reward for completing the identity mission. But if you think about it carefully, there is a reason why you got such a low score. After all, many tasks did not result in the final reward. For example, for the special status task, after Yan Niang became the Queen Mother, he had theoretically completed this task, but he did not choose to participate in the final ceremony. So much so that I missed the biggest reward at the core of the entire mission. The special plot missions also caused interruptions in my original script missions, which naturally meant that I was even less likely to get all the rewards from the main missions. To sum up, my script world this time is completely an act of opening up wasteland, and I didn't have time to explore many delicate aspects. It's pretty good to get such a script score. But the settlement is not over yet. You signed a special agreement with another player, and 250 script points have been received. This is Song Nuanuan's 500 script points, half of which goes to herself and half to Gao Zhou. You killed number 8 and got the prop card Ember and a script bronze badge. Please check the prop book for details. This news really surprised him, but it was also expected. Number 8 was so strong, and his combat power alone was enough to push him all the way up. It would be unreasonable for him to finish killing him by himself if he didn't explode some equipment. You have obtained the special item card Polypoma. In this script world, you completed the dual camp mission and obtained the special achievement Headwinder title. Please check it yourself. You complete this script space and get 2 bronze badges. The settlement was finally over here. As the darkness in front of him receded, when he opened his eyes again, he was standing on the street. When he raised his head, he saw that the sign of the Script Killing Experience Center had disappeared without a trace. Oh! I'm finally back. He stretched, turned around and ran straight to the cross street. He felt so empty in his stomach that he wished he could swallow a cow. Thinking about it, this time the script world spans a huge time span and the script is long. In it, I only have instant noodles and bread every day, and I almost feel sick. It was already early morning. But for food streets like Old Town Cross Street, there are also early morning sales. Those snack bars have long been closed, but the mobile stalls on both sides of the street can often keep you going until 3 o'clock in the night. A big bowl of rice noodles, and 2 steamed buns. If you can't eat the main meal, it's a good idea to have some snacks first. This old shop called Late Night Rice Noodles doesn't taste good, but the portions are good enough. A bowl of hot rice noodles was served, paired with steamed buns, and Su Tong sat on the chair and started to eat. To him, these things are just appetizers. While eating, he called out the props book and mentally took stock of all his gains. To say that the most rewarding part is undoubtedly the script score. Apart from the 700 points he earned, he originally killed the pharmacist and extracted all his script points, which totaled 670 points, plus Song Nuanuan's 250 points. Not counting the fractions, he now has 1,700 script points. With such a huge sum of money to protect my body, I can finally stand upright at the next progress meeting. This time, Script Space gave me a very low evaluation, but in terms of gains, I still made a lot of money. Dark Physique, the value of this core prop card, even if it were to be exchanged for all of his script points at the moment, he would never frown. What's more, what I gained this time was not just the Dark Physique prop card. The superpowers and enhancements he gained in the script world completely disappeared when he chose to return. But the powerful increase that the gene enhancement potion brings to him is a real treasure. Although he did not complete the special plot mission, in his opinion, the reward of Big Fatty may not be much worse than that given by the special plot mission. In addition, there are 2 prop cards just obtained. Ember and Polypoid Tumor. Ember. The extreme of life, the extreme of death, the remaining embers of fire, destined to have endless karma. Passive skill 1, Burning. The wearer's fire skill level increases by 1 level. Passive skill 2, Yin. When the target is damaged, there is a 10% chance of triggering bone fire. Note, bone-attached fire is not a special item and cannot be dispelled. It will continuously burn the opponent's flesh and blood, making the wound unable to heal and worsening over time. Active skill 1. To be identified. Active skill 2. To be identified. This prop card was obviously related to No 8's flame ability. Looking at the 2 active skills that still needed to be identified, he felt hot in his heart. I couldn't help but think of the image of number 8 opening his hands, causing black flames to form a terrifying vortex in his palms, strangling all enemies around him. Although there was little hope, I still secretly began to look forward to it. As for the other one, Polypoma. This thing is all about greetings, neither passive nor active, only 3 words, to be identified. It seems that this thing needs to be taken to the Script Killing Experience Center and authenticated before the basic information can be known. He was eating happily when suddenly he heard a piercing siren whistling behind him. What happened tonight? When I got off the highway, I already saw 5 or 6 police cars. Several drivers behind him who were sitting there eating couldn't help but start talking as they watched the police cars whizzing past, guessing whether there is some big case or some big action. Su Tong glanced at it and didn't care. After all, he was not interested in maintaining world peace. He put away the prop book and walked home. As soon as I got home and lay down on the bed, I fell asleep snoring. It was as if this small bed at home had infinite magic power. He immediately closed his eyes when he lay down on it, and no one needed to be on guard at all. As a result, at noon the next day, Mr. Song poured a basin of cold water on him. The ice-cold water was poured down in a basin, as if it had been lifted from an ice cellar. It was as cold as ice knives piercing the seams of bones. Su Tong couldn't help but shiver from the cold. Before he could open his eyes, he heard Mr. Song scolding, "Boy, did you go to the death pit last night, or did you go to Mang Mountain to sing for others? You smell like death, get up." Su Tong originally wanted to defend himself a few words, but he saw Mr. Song pulling him to the yard and letting him stand in the sun with a swipe of his finger. He saw 3 yellow incense sticks pinched by Mr. Song. Mr. Song muttered a few times, and then asked Su Tong to hold a piece of yellow incense between his fingers, and the third piece of yellow incense was inserted into the soil at his feet. At the same time, he took out the sesame oil and put a layer of sesame oil on his forehead and under his nostrils. At first he thought Mr. Song was making too much of a fuss, but he just smelled of death, so it shouldn't be anything serious. However, when he saw his own shadow in the green smoke, his eyes widened, and the careless expression on his face turned serious. All he saw was his shadow on the ground, standing crookedly in front of him, a faint black mist surrounding his shadow, followed by the green smoke filled with yellow fragrance. A sly hand actually came out of his own shadow, followed by a head, feet, and a human torso. Once it came out, it looked like a child, looking at the misty green smoke. Immediately opened his mouth and started to devour it. Mr. Song scolded Su Tong for being lazy while reprimanding Su Tong for being lazy. He took out a small boat in his other hand and placed it at his feet. "Huh, brat, you just came back by yourself, why did you bring a kid back with you? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 164. Where did this kid come from? Su Tong also felt strange that he didn't notice it at all. At this time, Mr. Song put a piece of yellow paper on the ground, waited for the kid to take a few mouthfuls of incense, and then quickly got into the small yellow boat. Bang, the boat suddenly ignited with blue flames, burned to ashes under the sun, and then completely disappeared. From the beginning to the end, Mr. Song didn't explain anything to him. He just asked him to stand in the sun and come to him after the incense candles were burned out. These 3 incense candles were neither long nor thick, but they burned terribly slowly. The sun on a hot day hit his head, and Su Tong suddenly felt as uncomfortable as being thrown into an oven. Don't forget that he also has the blessing of the Dark Constitution prop card. For him, sunbathing is like torture. However, during this process, he suddenly discovered something strange. It was really uncomfortable for him to have such a poisonous sun shining on him. But as the 3 yellow incense sticks burned out, he felt refreshed, as if something was coming from him. It felt like it was thrown away from me, and my whole body felt relaxed. The wet clothes on his body were dried in the sun, but he still put on drier clothes before carefully walking to Mr. Song's door. Speaking of which, at first I just wanted to learn the art of tying flowers from the old man, but after getting along with him for a while, I realized that the old man was hiding everything. Last time he saw through the jack mask on his face, and this time he got rid of him again. I don't know when an extra kid appeared on my body. Every time he takes action, his methods always surprise him. The old man saw through things that he didn't even notice at a glance. This couldn't help but give him a deeper understanding of Mr. Song. He stood in front of the door to calm down, and then walked through the door cautiously. I had come in to clean this room more than once in the past, and even sat in the room with the old man for a drink or two when nothing happened. It could be said that I was very familiar with it. But as soon as he entered the door today, Su Tong immediately felt that something was wrong. There was something wrong that I couldn't describe. I just felt that the sun was shining in through the window today, making the room hazy. What was even weirder were the paper figures in the room. In the past, the paper figures sat on chairs and looked very alive, but he never took them seriously. But today, as soon as he stepped in the door, he felt a sudden feeling, as if several pairs of eyes were focused on him for an instant. When he looked up, he saw the gray eyes of these paper figures staring at him. Is it an illusion? No. He was sure that this was not an illusion. After his physical strength increased, his five senses became even sharper than usual. He could feel that these paper figures seemed to be subtly different from those in the past. And this subtle difference is indescribable. If we really want to talk about it, we can only say that there seems to be God in the eyes of these paper people. Come in. Mr. Song urged him to come in, holding a cigarette pole and a pot in his hand. Today he did not sit in the first seat, but sat in the second seat below. What's even more strange is that the paper man who usually placed there was actually moved to the front seat by Mr. Song today. He also changed the paper man into a long blue coat and put on a fake beard. Su Tong raised his head and took a look. Not to mention, he didn't realize that this paper man looked a bit like his master Shuegoi's face after putting on the beard. Master. He didn't know what Mr. Song was going to do, but looking at his posture, he was really quite smart. He put away his usual playful smile, walked up and shouted in a polite manner. Seeing that Su Tong rarely behaved like this, Old Man Song twitched the corner of his mouth a few times and secretly cursed, "Ghost." Thinking of this, he put down the frightening wood in his other hand. In fact, it was originally intended to be a show-off for Su Tong. Whenever this kid dared to look as casual as usual after entering the door, he would give it to him first. Unfortunately, Su Tong felt something was wrong as soon as he stepped in, and did not give Old Man Song the chance to show off his power. But it doesn't matter, today is a big day. He thought about it all night last night, thinking that it was about time, so he got up early this morning, but he didn't know that this kid slept in again. When I looked again, I found that this boy was riddled with evil spirits. He had robbed a tomb and entered the pit of the dead. I had never seen such a strong evil spirit. Then he hurriedly prepared the talisman water and dragged the boy under the sun to remove the evil spirit and the clinging imp on his body. Kneel down. Mr. Song smoked his pipe and pot, winked at him, and motioned for him to kneel down in front. Su Tong immediately knelt down obediently, looking obedient and sensible. He was still the same bastard who usually made him half dead. Although there was no chance to teach this kid a lesson, Mr. Song was no longer angry after seeing how well behaved the brat was in front of his master. Putting down the cigarette stick in his hand, he sat upright. Su Tong, it's been a while since you came to my place. There is a saying that master leads you into practice alone. Today is the time to lead you in. Please look forward. He raised his head and squinted his eyes and saw 3 bowls placed under the master's feet. The 3 bowls were upside down on the ground. They looked like they were old, and there was still some soil on them. It was unknown where Mr. Song dug them out. Although we are from the 8 gates in our profession, there is also the saying of the 4 small yin gates. In fact, it is not that evil. But after all, because we deal with the dead, after a long time, we will inevitably encounter some bad evil things. Therefore, our profession mostly suffers from 5 shortcomings and 3 deficiencies. In the final analysis, We will not die well. Su Tong tilted his head and thought to himself, good guy, isn't this evil? Mr. Song pretended not to see the strange expression on his face, and said to himself, although you worship me as your master, you have never worshipped me as a master, and you have no serious title. Today we have fulfilled all the rules, from now on you will be the heir of our 7-sect lineage. Today, he first wanted to bring Su Tong in and formally perform the apprenticeship ceremony. Second, according to the sect rules, one should also be given a destiny number to correct his or her heart. Thinking of this, Mr. Song's expression became a little sad. He remembered that he once heard his master say that when he was a beginner, he didn't care about this rule, so he didn't choose. All that was left was a pile of bones and a piece of skin. When he started, he followed this rule, but he was unlucky and got a bad fortune. He was hit by many obstacles and was alone in his later years. He should have died in this old house long ago. It was only by chance that he got help from thaumaturgy, which allowed him to survive until today. But as for what the future outcome would be, he had no idea, so he had to deal with it today. Tong anyone who eats a bowl of rice is likely to have unknown companions, but our ancestor has also planned a way for us to survive. There are 3 bowls in front of us, and there is a command at the bottom of the bowl. You choose this one yourself. Bar. This is not their unique sect rule. In fact, not to mention the 8 sects, there are many such rules in even the lower and lower realms. It is said that this method was created by a Taoist. In the beginning, the saying of 5 evils and 3 shortcomings was only spread in a small area, mostly among hermits and eminent monks. Later, a Taoist accidentally learned about the 5 disadvantages and 3 shortcomings. The Taoist felt that this thing was too unfair to all kinds of people in the lower world. So I came up with this method. Since I couldn't avoid it, I simply gave myself a destiny first, and actively avoided the worst of the 5 disadvantages, loneliness and disability, and eliminated the fate among the 3 shortcomings. Although it will still not be easy, if you are lucky, at least you will have a good death in your later years. And if the fate is approved in advance and you pay more attention in the future, it may not be that there is no turning point. So this method was passed down, but the Taoist priest disappeared after that. Some people say that he has immeasurable merit and has transformed into an immortal. It was also said that he would die a good death if he revealed the secret. But no matter what, this method is correct. After Song Lao explained the reasons clearly in one breath, he urged Su Tong to make a choice quickly. Master, can you not choose this thing? I think I'm pretty good. Su Tong looked at the 3 bowls at his master's feet and began to murmur in his heart. If you don't choose, get out. I don't want to harm anyone. Mr. Song's face darkened, and it was obvious that he did not give Su Tong any room for discussion on this matter. Well, seeing Mr. Song's stinky face, Su Tong knew that this matter was not negotiable, so he could only bite the bullet and look at the 3 bowls under the master's feet. Which one is better? This was no different from opening a blind box. If you opened it wrongly, you would be doomed to be unlucky for a lifetime. Suddenly he started to have difficulties. When Mr. Song saw that he was not moving, he turned his head to listen suspiciously, only to hear the boy muttering, "Pick soldiers and generals, and fight on horseback. If you have money to drink, you will leave if you don't have money. Whoever you pick will be unlucky. Whoever you pick will be unlucky, it's my little strawberry." Hearing this kid's muttering, Mr. Song almost kicked him out. "You're cooperating with such an important initiation ceremony, why are you playing house here for me?" But at this time, Su Tong's hand finally stopped. When Mr. Song saw the bowl on the left, he began to feel nervous. He had prepared the things, but when placing them, he would not look at the things inside, and would even close his eyes to mess up the order, so he did not know what fate was inside. Su Tong stretched out his hand to open it, but as soon as he stretched out his hand, he suddenly felt a cold feeling on the back of his head. When he raised his head, he didn't know whether it was the angle or whether the master had really appeared. He glanced up and vaguely saw that the master's grey eyes were actually flashing with a faint light, as if they were coming to life. The sight made his heart tighten, and then he saw only the two masters. He turned his eyes to the left and glanced at the bowl on his left. When he tried to see clearly again, the master's eyes no longer had the agility they had just now. Master has appeared? His heart moved, and he looked at the bowl that the master was looking at just now, and without saying a word, he stretched out his hand to open it. As soon as the bottom of the bowl was opened, Mr. Song, who was sitting behind, had his eyes widened. He quickly came over to take a look and saw two balls rolling out, with the words widow and lone written on them respectively. Looking at the bottom of the bowl again, I saw the word Quan written on the bottom of the bowl. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 165. Immediately afterwards, a prompt sounded from the prop book. You have completed some kind of mysterious ritual, and you have obtained the special title Beginner. Please check it yourself for details. Another title? Su Tong couldn't help but be a little surprised. Could he also get a special title for what he did in reality? In shock, he quickly called out the props book and took a look. Beginner. Special title prop card. After activation, your physical fitness will be temporarily increased by 15%, and you will receive a special luck bonus. Lucky bonus, please experience it yourself for details. Duration, 1 hour. Note that you will gain a negative status after finishing. Note, only one title card can be activated at a time. Not bad. After seeing the fate chosen by Su Tong, Mr. Song's face suddenly burst into laughter and he kicked Su Tong in the butt. Why don't you thank you, master? This is your master's eyesight, allowing you to catch up. Judging from his destiny, Su Tong is destined to have no power in his life. The explanation for being a widower and an orphan is actually simple. The former means he has no wife, and the latter means he has no parents. Although it doesn't look good, in Mr. Song's eyes, this is already a good fortune for Grandmaster. Especially in this new era, power is not something ordinary people can think about. As for not having a wife, then just don't have a wife, as long as you have money. As for the death of his parents, you can tell from Su Tong's expression that this has no impact on him at all. However, Mr. Song would not say these words. He only reminded Su Tong, this is the fate, but the fate will not be like this. You can understand it as a kind of commandment, just like a monk cannot kill, an ascetic cannot touch money, and if you keep the commandments, you will improve by leaps and bounds as you practice. Then what if we can't hold on? He blinked and asked curiously. Unexpectedly, Mr. Song's face darkened, and his voice became gloomy. If you can't hold on, you will definitely suffer. At the least, your family will be destroyed, and at the worst, your soul will be scattered. After speaking, he was afraid that Su Tong would disapprove, so he pointed at the paper figures in the room in front of him. Now that you have entered the door, I will not hide some things from you. These people are all my relatives. Mr. Song pointed at the paper figures in the room, took a puff from the pot, and looked at the figures sitting on the chairs in the room. His eyes were strange and unclear, as if he was stuck in some kind of nostalgia, but also a little self-blame. Back then, before I entered the family, I had already arranged a wedding for my baby, and the family was happy and happy. However, after I entered the family, I was left alone. My master advised me to leave early, live outside by myself, and cut off contact with my family. But I was greedy and thought that as long as the person was not at home, it would be fine, and it would be fine if I contacted them occasionally. But within 3 years, they were gone, and I almost lost half my life later. Speaking of this, Mr. Song's expression finally became a little tired. He took a few puffs of cigarette and drank a cup of tea before he managed to regain his energy. This is my fault. We are heresy. This is our destiny. We shouldn't be like this. If you want to live a warm life with a wife and children, don't join this industry. Mr. Song wanted to explain all these things clearly today, so he talked a lot. Finally, he took his arm and said sincerely, remember, don't deceive others. Su Tong sat aside and listened carefully. In the end, he couldn't hold it back. He glanced at the paper girl sitting next to Mr. Song and whispered, then this must be my master's wife. Mr. Song didn't react. He snorted lightly and followed Su Tong's words, almost sending him away. Oh. No wonder you always hold her to sleep at night. Get out. Mr. Song made a big blush and kicked Su Tong out. Go and buy 2 kilograms of pig ears, and give me a bottle of good wine. This is your apprenticeship ceremony. After Su Tong ran out in a heap, Song Lao breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the paper man sitting on the front seat. Master, our lineage can be regarded as a heritage, but I don't know what this kid will do in the future. As far as the road goes. Speaking of this, Mr. Song turned around and looked at the paper figurine beside him, stretched out his hand and patted her little hand and said, I plan to teach him the few tricks left by the master. I won't teach him the rest. He can learn on his own. You guys, just wait for me, wait a little longer, it won't be long. As he spoke, he raised his head and leaned on the Taishi chair. Not long after, he heard bursts of snoring. Hey, it's still 1 pound of pig ears and 1 pound of pig intestines. When the boss of Jiajia braised pork saw Su Tong coming, he immediately sat up enthusiastically. Su Tong had obviously taken care of the business during this period. The taste of this braised pork was actually average. I came to this restaurant simply because it was not on the ancient street of the old city. If the police came to find me again, I could avoid a lot of trouble. But today, seeing that the other party was almost treating him as a mature person, Su Tong felt that it was necessary for him to find another family. 2 pounds of pig ears, 1 pound of large intestine, and 1 pound of pig head meat. Are you having a guest at home today? When the boss heard that the portion had increased, he quickly started to work while chatting casually with Su Tong. I'm going on a long trip, so I'll take some food with me on the road. Su Tong grinned and responded casually. Oh, that's a good relationship, but please be careful when going out recently. Haven't you heard? There has been a big case recently. Big case? Yes, he died miserably. The boss held up a bright kitchen knife and chopped the braised pig head into 2 halves. Boom, boom, boom. The kitchen knife was struck on the pile, and the ruddy sausage was cut open quickly. The unique aroma of the large intestine began to spread out. The boss said while cutting, it is said that 3 people died, and now the police are all over the world looking for the murderer. When Su Tong heard this, he couldn't help but nodded. No wonder there were so many patrol cars on the street recently. After buying food and some steamed buns, when passing by the supermarket, he went in to buy some trivial supplies, and bought 2 bottles of wool yanjai, which he filled with both hands and carried them home. When I opened the door and took a look, I found that Mr. Song was already asleep on the bed. I wanted to go up and tuck him into bed, but when I saw that the mistress was still there, I had to put the food, tobacco, and wine on the table. Then he exited carefully and closed the door behind him. The old man fell asleep, so he simply went out to deal with the problem. After thinking about it again, he came back this time with enough bronze badges. When he goes to the exhibition next time, he can just exchange it for a silver badge. Thinking of this, Su Tong knew that he should go back and have a look, and at least say hello to his good brother. I believe he must miss me after not seeing him for so long. Captain Sun, please sit down. Sun Liansheng looked at the man in front of him, who was about the same age as him. His eyes quickly scanned him, and at the same time, all the information and information about the man in front of him flashed in his mind. Wang Chen, 45 years old, Vice President of the 5th People's Hospital of El City. He is the same age as himself, but he is already one of the leading professors of psychiatry in the country. He has recently published many papers on psychiatric research, which has caused quite a stir internationally. Comparing myself, I suddenly feel that at my age, I always feel like I am wasting my time. Well, I'm ashamed to say that, we didn't find that madman last time. Captain Sun felt a little embarrassed when he mentioned what happened last time. After all, he was the one who guaranteed the deal. He threatened that he would be able to find the guy, but he still didn't believe it, which made him a little worried. Hey, I can't blame you for this. It's normal that you can't find him. Dean Wang seemed to understand Captain Sun's feelings very well, and casually picked up the thick file bag on the table and placed it in front of Sun Liansheng. It's normal that you can't catch him. This guy is like a cunning fox, but he is also a natural actor. Do you know who his teacher is? Sun Liansheng shook his head. Dean Wang opened the curtains of his office, stood in front of the window, looked at the red building behind the hospital and said, "That building is the critical ward of the hospital." Sun Liansheng stuck his head out, took a closer look and said with a smile, "Oh, it's a little smaller than I thought." Because it doesn't need to be so big, the number of patients in the serious ward is very small. In fact, for most mentally ill people, they don't need to be locked up alone. Even the ones that can't be cured can be placed in the mild ward, because they, apart from being crazy and silly, it won't cause any harm to others. Dean Wang said, focusing on the iron window of the building opposite, "But the people in the serious ward are different. In addition to those crazy people, there are some people, some special people. They are the patients we have trouble with." Oh. Thank you for your hard work, Dean Wang. Sun Liansheng dealt with it casually, while looking directly at the information in his hand. There is actually a photo of Su's childhood in the document. In the photo, a middle-aged man is lifting him high. From the background, it is the sycamore tree under the red building in front of him. Sensing the police officer's impatience, Dean Wang was not dissatisfied, but continued, "These people include doctors, scholars, scientists, thieves, murderers, and even some successful people. They are always full of strange things. They are not simply crazy, but the thoughts in their heads are completely different from those of us normal people, just like that guy." Dean Wang pointed to the old man at the window on the left, who looked amiable. Who would have thought that this old guy would sneak into his neighbor's house in the middle of the night, and without making a sound or speaking, he would squat in front of the neighbor's bed and watch him quietly. It was more than a month ago, and I only found out about it when my neighbor accidentally woke up from his sleep again. It is said that when the neighbor learned that this guy squatted beside his bed every night, he was so frightened that he moved overnight and never appeared again. Been back. When asked why, the old man said that the sleeping neighbor was his true friend, and the neighbor during the day was just a skin without a soul. It is this kind of people who are the ones that give Dean Wang a headache. Unfortunately, the madman Su Tong they want to catch grew up surrounded by these madmen for some special reasons. Every weirdo in that building is his teacher, and every teacher is his friend. Su Tong has stayed here for nearly 12 years, or in other words, this is his home, and everything in it's his family. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 166. A child has stayed here for 12 years. Was he severely mentally ill as a child? Sun Liansheng turned his head and looked at Dean Wang. No. He was an ordinary child, at least at that time. He was able to freely enter the critical area because of some disgraceful historical issues. Disgraceful history. Sun Liansheng's eyes widened, and the sloppy look of impatience on his face suddenly revived, looking forward to Dean Wang continuing to speak. Dean Wang raised his eyebrows slightly, as if he realized that he seemed to have said something wrong, but he was not stupid enough to say it out of his own mouth. He turned around and opened the office door, glanced at the corridor, and happened to see the attending physician, Director Gang, walking out of the archives with a document bag in his arms. Although I was confused as to why Director Kong would go to a place like the archives, now that he was here, it would help him get rid of these two troubles. Director Kong, this way. Dean Wang said hello, turned to Sun Liansheng and said, I have a very important meeting this afternoon. I will let Director Kong cooperate with your investigation on this case. As he spoke, Dean Wang waved and introduced a middle-aged man in his 40s to Sun Liansheng. At the same time, he did not forget to whisper into Director Kang's ear, send him away quickly. Don't say anything you shouldn't say. After speaking, he patted Director Kang's shoulder and cast a meaningful look at the old subordinate. Seeing the little look Director Wang cast, Director Kang, who had always been slow, understood very quickly today. He raised his eyebrows and nodded repeatedly, oh. Don't worry, I understand. I will definitely cooperate with the two police officers. Mission accomplished. After speaking, a smile appeared on the thin cheek, and he strode forward to greet Sun Liansheng, raising his hand, hello, Dean Wang is very busy, but if you need anything, I can fully cooperate with you. Dean Wang stood at the back and glanced at Director Kong, who was full of enthusiasm in the office. He curled his lips and said, Lao Kong finally got the idea. I thought he wouldn't understand what I meant. But on second thought, Dean Wang felt that this was fine. When Lao Kong exposed his previous scandals, the old Dean would probably retire early. Dean Wang grinned at the thought and quickly left the office door. This way please. Director Kong was particularly enthusiastic today. He personally led Sun Liansheng through the corridor of the ward and introduced him as he walked. Our hospital has also made great progress in the mental field in recent years. The patients here have basically achieved drug control. As long as they do not actively stimulate them and take medicine on time, they can be discharged from the hospital on their own and return to normal life. Live in it. As he spoke, he took out the key and opened the door at the end of the corridor. On the other side of the door was a yard the size of 4 basketball courts, with a sycamore tree standing in the middle. This is a French toom tree imported from abroad. It is tall and straight. Its crown is like a big open umbrella, covering the entire yard in cool shade. Sun Liansheng took out the photos in his file and compared them. After more than 10 years, the sycamore tree in front of him was only slightly larger than the one in the photo. Looking at the figure in the photo again, I couldn't help but sigh, things are really different. Isn't that right? The old guy in the photo died a few years ago. Director Kong glanced at the photo out of the corner of his eye and seemed to recognize the middle-aged man holding a child in the photo. Painting, and on the day he died, he used his own blood as dye and left a large and strange landscape painting in the room. Landscape painting. The young police officer following Sun Liansheng couldn't help but feel a little surprised when he heard this. Can't you provide him with ink dye? Why do you have to use blood to paint? Because he painted a picture of hell. Director Kong raised his brows slightly, and couldn't help but speed up his pace. That is a painting that should not appear in reality. His blood is just the introduction. Only with the sacrifice of his life can this painting be made possible. The painting is complete. Hell map. The young police officer and Sun Liansheng looked at each other and saw that Director Kong had opened the iron door of the room in front of him. After pushing the door open, a faint musty smell filled the air from inside. The two of them stuck their heads out and took a look inside. They saw that the room was gray and no one had lived in it for a long time. The wall on the left was painted white, but the 3 walls on the right were covered with bright red graffiti and handprints. That's it? The young police officer curled his lips and pointed at the irregular lines and messy handprints in the room. Although he did not laugh out loud out of respect, the disdainful expression on his lips could no longer be concealed. Director Kong, who suddenly stood behind him, suddenly raised his hand and pushed the young police officer standing at the door in. Bang! The other hand closed the iron door and locked it again. Director Kong. What are you doing? Not to mention the little police officer, Sun Liansheng couldn't help but change his expression. He hurriedly went to push the door, but the door had been locked automatically. He could only glare at Director Kong behind him. However, when he turned around, he saw Director Kang's face was half hidden in the shadows. The black and white eyeballs were staring at him indifferently. Don't worry, this is also an experience, and it is most helpful for young people like him. As soon as he finished speaking, the little police officer's scream came from the room. The screams were heartbreaking, as if they had seen something terrible. They were banging on the door frantically. Little Luo, Director Kong, open the door immediately, otherwise you will be attacking the police and obstructing official duties. Sun Liansheng had never seen any big winds and waves in these years. He realized something was wrong, turned around and reached out to Director Kang's arm to signal him to open the door. But when he grabbed it, he found that he had missed it. Director Kong in front of him stepped back and threw the key to the door to him. At this time, Sun Liansheng didn't care so much and hurriedly picked up the key and opened the door. As soon as the door opened, a black shadow rolled out and ran into his arms. Captain, don't go, the murderer has been caught, please don't go. Ronaldinho held his arm tightly with both hands, sobbing softly, as if he was about to have a mental breakdown. It turned out that after the door from the room was closed, he felt an extremely depressing feeling for no reason, as if he could not breathe. When he raised his head, the world was spinning, and he could see clearly under those messy lines. Outlines the strange peaks and floating islands of skeletons. What was even more frightening was that when he looked up, he saw his deceased comrades and captain. He had just graduated a year ago. During a pursuit mission, their car accidentally crashed off a bridge. As a result, 2 team members in the car, including his previous captain, were killed. But he was sitting in the back seat of the car, pushed open the car door first, was thrown out, and accidentally hung on a crooked tree, but survived. This incident had only become a scar in his heart, but it had just been ruthlessly opened. Looking at the captain and the others standing neatly not far away from him, looking at him from a distance, he wanted to rush up and hug the old captain, and tell them that the murderer they were chasing back then had been punished by law. When he told the captain the result, they just looked at each other and smiled. Then the smiles on their faces gradually faded. They stood upright and raised their right hands to salute him until they disappeared in front of him. He chased desperately, but nothing caught up with him. Seeing Xiao Luo crying out of breath in his arms, Sun Liansheng quickly patted his shoulders to comfort him. But Sun Liansheng is obviously not good at comforting people. After finishing the phone call, Ronaldinho was left crying and out of breath. At this time, Director Kong said, "Everything you see is fake. Only people with obsessions in their hearts will see some illusions. I slept in there for 2 days and I didn't even see a fart." Sun Liansheng frowned when he heard this and looked at Director Kong in front of him coldly. "You have gone too far. Is this too much?" Director Kong tilted his head, his eyes gradually narrowed into a line, and he pointed at the quiet corridor in front of him. "We haven't started walking yet. If you are afraid, you can go back." After saying that, he picked up the key and opened the iron door in front of him, standing by the iron door and waiting quietly. "Ronald, please wait for me here. I'll be back in a moment." Sun Liansheng gritted his teeth and put Xiao Luo aside, stood up, straightened his clothes, and walked into the iron gate with his head held high. "This way please." The smile on Director Kang's face grew stronger, and he led Sun Liansheng straight to the corridor on the 2nd floor. As soon as he reached the steps of the 2nd floor, a fat nurse was leaning against the wall and cracking melon seeds. After seeing Director Kong, the nurse's honest little face suddenly changed. She quickly stood up and hid the handful of melon seeds behind her body. I'm stealing food again, a few times. This is work time, I don't let you eat snacks here. You know, do it if you can, and get out as soon as possible. The harsh questioning did not leave any sympathy for the nurse, causing crystal tears to start flowing down the fat nurse's honest face. She lowered her head and shook her shoulders as if to cover up her sobs. Director Kong, forget it, we have to handle the case. Seeing that the nurse was already crying, Sun Liansheng couldn't help but couldn't bear it, so he stepped forward and spoke. Director Kong looked like he was avoiding trouble and pointed at the fat nurse in front of him. This time it's Captain Sun who is begging for mercy. Don't let me see if you hear me next time. The fat nurse nodded with an aggrieved look. Unexpectedly, Director Kong raised his hand and actually gave a lollipop in front of the fat nurse. The performance was good. Keep up the good work next time. Good. When the fat nurse looked up, there was no trace of crying on her face. The bright smile on her big and honest face made Sun Liansheng stunned for a while. Seeing the fat nurse turn and leave, he came back to his senses and said in surprise, "She is." Director Kong quickly covered his mouth with his hand, shook his head to signal him not to say anything, then raised his eyelids and slowly turned his head, only to see the fat nurse who had a face full of joy just now. At this time, the whole face looked like a bear about to get angry. Both eyes were covered with a thick layer of bloodshot eyes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 167. Sun Liansheng has been a policeman for so many years, and he has never seen any vicious gangsters. But when he looked back at the female nurse, he couldn't help being shocked. Even though he was a ferocious gangster, he was definitely not as fierce as he looked. It was as if the person standing in front of him was more like an enraged bear that could pounce on him at any time and tear him into pieces. Fortunately, at this time, Director Kong glared at Sun Liansheng and shouted, "Of course she is our best actor. You must learn more from your senior sister in the future." As he spoke, he ignored the angry fat nurse, took Sun Liansheng's arm and said, "Let's go, let master teach you." Hearing the word master, the fat nurse's expression suddenly improved, and she nodded to Director Kong repeatedly until she saw the two of them walking around the corner. After confirming that the fat sister had not caught up, Director Kong finally breathed a sigh of relief and said to Sun Liansheng, "Her name is Guo Yu. She has been fond of performing since she was a child. Until she had a fight with her parents one night, she picked up a kitchen knife and killed 7 people at night. And when the police arrived, they heard her laughing and saying that she was playing the butcher. It is said that the police wanted to arrest her, but even the SWAT team was alerted. This woman had a gas can in each hand. Just like the devil Chen Yejin, she even received 2 injections of anesthetic to subdue her. In fact, as long as you follow Lu Chenchen's performance and cooperate with her to make her happy, the matter will be easy to discuss. What's more, Director Kong also gave her a lollipop as a reward. Then who is the master you are talking about? Sun Liansheng asked curiously. That's the room. Director Kong pointed to the room not far ahead, walked over with Sun Liansheng, pointed to the old man in the room and introduced, "This is the master." As for his real name, no one knows now. When Sun Liansheng heard this, he could no longer suppress his curiosity. He walked to the door and fixed his eyes on the observation port. I saw an old man in his 50s lying on the bed in the room, his eyes slightly lowered as if he had fallen asleep, and his snoring could be heard from time to time. There were many dolls placed on the bed. Just when Sun Liansheng wanted to take a closer look, he suddenly heard a woman's voice coming from the room. I just heard fat girl's voice. I don't know who made her angry again. Then there was another man's voice in the room, "Hey, I made Lu Chen Chen angry. Even if I hide, it won't work. Her nose is smarter than a dog's nose. Humph, who knows, what if Lu Chen Chen just sneezed? Seeing how exaggerated you are, I'm not afraid of her. This voice was obviously that of a young man. But after a while, there were already 7 or 8 people in the room, chatting animatedly. Now Sun Liansheng was stunned. He stood on tiptoe and looked left and right through the observation window. He saw that there was really no one else in the small room except the dolls and the old man who was already asleep. He immediately rubbed his eyes, almost wondering if he had seen a ghost. It's ventriloquism. Fortunately, Director Kong on the side quickly solved his doubts, and Sun Liansheng finally realized what he was thinking. It turns out that this master's special skill is ventriloquism, not only ventriloquism, but also imitating ventriloquism. But he is a bit schizophrenic, no one can say for sure, Director Kong said in a low voice. Sun Liansheng felt that his eyes had been opened today. He never expected that such a small mental hospital would be a land of crouching tigers, hidden dragons, and everyone was talented. By the way, I heard from Dean Wang before that madman Su Tong has been here for 12 years. Can you tell me about this? Sun Liansheng suddenly remembered what happened with Su Tong and asked Director Kong in front of him. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a burst of sneer coming from the master's room in front of him. Hey, this brat always comes to lie to me and asks me to teach him ventriloquism. It's a pity that I didn't teach him. Ha ha ha. As soon as the master finished speaking, a doll moved and said to the master, come on, who can't do ventriloquism? The old man next door has been taught a lifetime of Peking opera. Look how happy he was when he died. Ah. Yeah, if you don't teach me, just take him into the coffin. It was the young boy talking again, which made the master so angry. Director Kong pulled Sun Liansheng forward and whispered as he walked, actually, this child is the illegitimate child of a doctor and a patient. In those days, it was a disaster. If word spread, the whole hospital would be in trouble, so the old dean and the others were trying their best to hide this matter. Later, the child was born in this hospital. The old director even used his connections to apply for a household registration for the child. Even though the child regarded this place as a family, he spent most of his time in the serious ward, and he began to suffer from subtle effects. Learned from these crazy people. Later we discovered that the child's thinking had been led astray by these lunatics, so we began to try various methods to treat the child, but was it effective? Haha. Director Kong said helplessly. So that's it? So after this patient ran out, you were worried that things would get serious, so you used your connections to ask me to find this guy as soon as possible and arrest him. Sun Liansheng began to guess. But this guess was immediately ruthlessly shattered by Director Kong. He shook his head and walked forward with Sun Liansheng. You are right or wrong. The most important thing is that this little lunatic has grown up and has actually become a kind of lubricant among lunatics. And the most important thing is that he is the only one in the whole hospital who can make his friends completely quiet. Come down. Friend. Sun Liansheng was surprised and said, he still has friends. Of course, and best friends. I saw the smile on Director Kang's face getting weirder and weirder. He walked to the red door in front of him and inserted the key into the door. Seeing this, Sun Liansheng raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't know why he suddenly had a very bad feeling in his heart. Director Kong, what do you want to do? But Director Kong ignored him and just smiled and twisted the key in his hand. Kaka kaka. As a twisting sound came from the keyhole, Sun Liansheng's expression changed, and he stepped forward to stop him. As soon as he stretched out his hand, Director Kong ducked sideways, raised his leg and kicked him out. His sharp leopard-like skills are not at all like the physique of a middle-aged man in his 40s. He looked at the door in front of him, pulled hard, and with the sound of the door being opened, he screamed excitedly, "Come out, my friend. Sorry, I was so dizzy last night that I posted it without correcting the typos. It has been corrected now. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 168. He raised his hands high and opened the red iron door directly. Crash la la la. With the harsh sound of the door, the temperature of the entire corridor seemed to have dropped by more than 10 degrees. He came here specifically to pick up his good friend today, but he didn't expect to meet Sun Liansheng and the others by chance. He didn't expect that the hospital was still asking the police to look for him, so he just brought him with him. Su Tong's eyes were shining brightly, and his fists were clenched tightly, making a rattling sound. It was more of excitement than anticipation. However, as the buzzing of the door gradually stopped, the smile on Su Tong's face gradually stiffened little by little. The room was empty. The wall was covered with the word kill written in bright red blood, and in the most conspicuous place, there was a paragraph written on it. Su Tong. I will break your bones into ashes and cut you into pieces. The word kill is written all over the wall, and each stroke reveals a twisted hatred. But Su Tong didn't care about this at all. What he cared about was, where is his little friend? Where are the people? He looked left and right, his face full of confusion, when Sun Liansheng's laughter suddenly came from behind him. Ha ha ha, ahem, ha ha. Sun Liansheng clutched his chest. At this time, he finally determined that the guy in front of him who looked like Director Kong was the madman Su Tong they wanted to catch before. But it was a trick of fate. They had tried every means to hunt down Su Tong, but they had never been able to catch him. Now Su Tong appeared in front of him, but it was no longer necessary to arrest him or not, because there was a more difficult problem, that is, the guy who was supposed to be locked up had already escaped. You don't know yet. Do you think we are here today to listen to your story? This kid ran away. He killed the nurse, ran out, and killed 3 more people. Now everyone in the city is looking for him. Sun Liansheng did not get up from the ground immediately, but sat on the ground and lowered his posture to try to communicate with Su Tong. Ran. Su Tong looked back at the blood words in the room, his head suddenly buzzed, and his heart felt empty as if he had lost some treasure. I saw that Sun Liansheng was holding another information book in his hand, Changhua Hen, a paranoid mental disorder, antisocial personality, was arrested and prosecuted for killing the teacher, and was forcibly detained here. Sun Liansheng raised his head. After you ran away, this guy has been cursing you every day, and his temper has become more and more violent. This is why the hospital has been trying to catch you back. I am also curious about what makes him treat you like this hatred. Even after every killing, your name will be left behind. Sun Liansheng sat on the ground, took out his mobile phone and flipped through the pages. In every crime scene on it, 2 words appeared, Su Tong. It was like some kind of declaration, deliberately used to inform him in this way. Looking at the crooked name on the photo, Su Tong rolled his eyes and muttered in a low voice, "Stingy, aren't you just doing a small surgery for him? Is that what it is? What minor surgery?" Sun Liansheng's ears pricked up, obviously unwilling to let go of any clue. However, how could Su Tong follow his train of thought? He rolled his eyes and asked, "He killed 3 people in such a short period of time, and you didn't catch him? According to my understanding of this guy, he has no idea what counter-reconnaissance is, and he has no ability to blend in with normal people. It should not be difficult to catch him at all. But so much time has passed and he has not been caught, which makes me confused." Speaking of this matter, Sun Liansheng looked at Su Tong's face, Director Kang's face and said, "I can't catch him. This guy just seemed to disappear out of thin air. Suddenly he completely disappeared without a trace. This appearance of disappearing from the world is very similar to your situation, but different. In short, we have no clue about him now, and we can't find any trace of him at all." This is also the reason why the police have not disclosed it to the media so far, mainly because they are afraid of causing panic. Disappear into thin air. When he heard these 4 words, the first thought in his mind was that sign with flashing neon lights. His heart sank, and a bad premonition came over him. Damn it, I've actually been poached. He wailed in his heart. If this was really the case, then things would be a bit serious. Sun Liansheng stared at the change of expression on Su Tong's face, hoping to see some clues, but to his disappointment, there was no change at all on the face. Seeing this, Sun Liansheng could only use his trump card. He stood up and said to Su Tong, "I don't know what the grudge is between you, but he will definitely find you. This is a dangerous guy and we must arrest him, so if you have clues, we can also cooperate." Compared to a murderous maniac, the harm of a psychopath like Su Tong is negligible. And his strong intuition told him that this guy seemed to know some important clues that he didn't know. Cooperate. Yes, cooperation. Just when Sun Liansheng was about to work harder, he suddenly felt a cool breeze coming from behind him. Sun Liansheng, who was experienced in combat, hurriedly stepped aside and kicked back without thinking. As a result, the kick almost sent him flying. When he looked up, he saw clearly that it was the fat nurse just now. "Don't do it, I'm acting too." Seeing the fat nurse grabbing his ankle with one hand, preventing him from breaking free like an iron vice, Sun Liansheng suddenly had an idea and shouted to the fat nurse. As a result, this cute fat man raised his fist and punched Sun Liansheng down. He didn't even have time to dodge this time. A fist as big as a casserole was reflected in his pupils. There was a buzz in his head, and he was knocked to the ground the next second. His whole vision went dark, and he could vaguely hear the fat nurse scolding her angrily, "You are so stupid, who acted with you?" Su Tong tore off the jack mask on his face, walked to the fat sister and said with a smile, "Yes, this fool really believes it. I didn't expect there to be such naive people in the world. Do you believe anything others say?" The fat girl raised her head with a proud face and said to Su Tong, "Look, my acting skills have improved a lot recently." "Of course." Su Tong gave a thumbs up, pretended to fumble in his pocket, and then took a pack of biscuits from his pocket and gave it to the fat girl. "I came in a hurry this time. I will bring you chocolate next time." As soon as the fat girl took the biscuit, she immediately beamed with joy. She held the biscuit in both hands and ran backwards. She shouted as she ran, "Look, I won the Golden Rooster Award. Ha ha ha, I am the best actress of the Golden Rooster Award. Well, look, I won a prize." Seeing the fat girl getting sick again, the corner of Su Tong's mouth twitched a few times. He turned to look at the medication diary hanging on the wall. He opened it and found the fat girl's name. He silently wrote 2 words on the back of her medication diary, "double." Then without looking at Sun Liansheng on the ground, he turned around and walked to the 3rd floor. The door lock on the 3rd floor was simpler, or it was not locked at all. It was an iron door with an unclosed iron rope hanging casually on the door pin. You don't even need the key to open the door. The reason for this is partly because the caregivers are lazy, and partly because there are only 2 people locked up on the 3rd floor. One is an old man over 50 years old. The other is a young man in his 30s. These 2 people are the treasures of this hospital. On weekdays, except for the nursing staff, no attending doctor is allowed to consult them. There would be no such thing as the attending doctor who couldn't think of anything and came to chat with these 2 people. Su Tong approached the door of the first room and quietly opened the observation window. A man in his 30s was sitting cross-legged on the ground. The light from the window shone down, making this man seem to be covered with a hazy layer. The luster made people blurry. "You came." The man closed his eyes slightly and seemed to be aware of Su Tong behind the door. He smiled kindly on his face and said, "I haven't seen you for a long time. I heard that you went out. Is the outside world so fun?" I haven't seen it for several years. It's the outside world. Su Tong, who was standing behind the door, said nothing, but the man didn't seem to care about it and continued, I remember when I was in junior high school, I got out of school very late once, it was dark and snowing, and my dad was riding the bicycle took me to the intersection of Jiamiang Street. There was a wonton shop there. It tasted really good. It was the best wonton I have ever eaten. The man seemed to be caught in some kind of memory, with a bright smile on his face. Even though he had not shaved for a long time and looked a little sloppy, the sun shone on his face, and the man slowly opened his eyes, black and white. The clear pupils actually give people a sense of intimacy like a spring breeze. Unfortunately, Su Tong didn't even take a look and closed the observation window. Then he stood outside the door and counted silently for 3 seconds, then opened the observation window, and then closed it again in less than a second. A moment later, the sound of banging on the door came from behind the door. Accompanied by the angry slamming of the door, there was also the man's angry curse, bastard, I will throw you into the meat grinder, open the door for me. All kinds of obscene words echoed behind the door, and every word sounded as if it had jumped out of a smelly ditch. Fortunately, it's not time for the nurse to deliver the medicine yet, otherwise they would be very surprised. You know, this man usually wants to package himself as a gentle and elegant magic stick. Today is like a ignited explosive barrel. However, Su Tong, who has seen this guy's case, knows very well that this guy is a wolf in sheep's clothing. What he is best at is to confuse and brainwash you, and then rob you bit by bit. After taking away your wealth and even taking your wife and children as their own, they will trick you into committing suicide. This guy seemed to have planned and successfully killed several people abroad, but was released because there was no evidence. As a result, he wanted to continue it after returning to China. There were already some signs of this. As a result, when I was walking in the community, I saw the old ladies dancing in the square. I felt that they were also good followers, so I took the initiative to join them and started to try the brainwashing method myself. But he never dreamed that these street neighborhood committee ants firmly believed that the red spirit of the revolution was unbreakable. Instead of succeeding, they sent themselves in. Recently, I have had a big problem with my body. It seems that the dampness poison is too strong. I feel dizzy, dry mouth, and I still feel thirsty after drinking water like crazy. I also feel sleepy very easily. I am currently taking Chinese medicine, but I don't know if it will help.